From the Major Label Debut Podcast Network, this is MLD News. My name is Graham Wright, and joining me to look at some of the music news that's floating around the transom today is, as always, Major Label Debut producer John Paul Bullock. John Paul, hello.
Hello, Graham. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I feel energized because for the first time in the long and storied history of MLD News, we have actual breaking news. We just did a wonderful interview that will come out on the show later. And while you, other producer Josh Hook, and I were in the waiting room preparing, I looked at my phone, as I sometimes do, and saw on Instagram a picture of Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. And it just, sometimes when you see a picture of a musician like that in that context, you just know in your heart immediately that it's not a random tribute. And indeed, it transpired that the great Brian Wilson, the genius behind the Beach Boys and behind a sound and strain of rock and pop music that endures to this day, one of the most important towering figures in all of music history the whole time. I mean, there's no amount of exaggeration that you can do about how important and great and brilliant Brian Wilson was. And Brian Wilson has left this earth behind today, at least today when we're recording it. And so we thought we'd better talk a little bit about just the greatness of Brian Wilson and the incredible legacy that he leaves behind him. So I guess I'll start by asking you, John Paul, you're a little bit older than me. What was your first experience with the Beach Boys as a music fan? Because I think we all hear I Get Around and Surfin' USA before we're old enough to really understand about music and about how those were significant songs as well. But when you were a music lover, when you were someone who cared about the artistry of it all, what was your first exposure to that version of the Beach Boys?
We didn't have many records in my parents' house, but when we would go visit my grandmother, my dad and his brothers had some 45s and some LPs, and they had a bunch of Beach Boys records. And so some of my earliest memories of music are of the Beach Boys, and I was a Beach Boys obsessive for a while. I've written a bunch about them. I've seen the Mike Love version of it, and I saw Brian perform twice. Actually, the last time I saw Brian, I saw him in person in downtown Los Angeles. I was over near the courthouse, and he was being led. He was with his wife, Melinda Ledbetter, I think is her name. I think she's also passed away, but was being led out of a courthouse and sort of with two kind of security guard type guys. But his work and the Beach Boys music is incredibly important to me. And I know that it's heartbreaking for a lot of people that he's gone, but I think the legacy that he has left behind will endure and reassure many of us forever. Just today, I was listening to Love and Mercy following when you told me that he was gone, and just rock solid, an unbelievable song that still just has had. I mean, it's the thing that, like, anytime there's horrific political news, or it is something I've used to calm myself over and over and over and over again throughout my life. Just the guy, he was, even then, even after a lot of trouble in his life, he was still making beautiful music.
We had a great talk on the show a while ago with Bob Berryhill of the Surfaris, who were sort of surf music pioneers and therefore sort of proto Beach Boys act, not to dismiss them so glibly. But doing that interview occasioned a lot of listening to old 1950s surf music. And I know, John Paul, you are a surf music head going way back, but for me, it was a new experience really delving into that stuff. And the thing that stuck out to me the most was how shiny it was and how teenage it was. And, you know, they were kind of inventing the teenager around that time. And this music really sounds 1950s American, aw shucks, wholesome, whatever you want to say about it. And the thing that's so amazing about Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys is that they started there, and then when they went on the artistic journey to the stratosphere that they went on, they maintained that same feeling. I hear in a song as complex and layered and just, plainly genius as A God Only Knows, all of the same beautiful, shining, youthful, I'm not sure if innocence is quite the word I want to
Well,
use here, but it's something
optimism for
pure.
sure.
Yeah.
Optimism for sure. Like it is. It all at least comes from a place, despite everything that was very publicly now that went on with that man in his childhood and later in his life. There, it comes from a real place of pure optimism. I feel like so many of those songs are about the potential of the future, and it's really remarkable that he was able to continue doing what he was doing even until I saw him do Pet Sounds at the Hollywood Bowl in the version of it that was put together by the dude from the Wondermints, who we should maybe ask to be on this podcast. But they it's just incredible, and he was, at that time, he was an old man who had a lot of physical and mental trouble, obviously.
This is not a Mick Jagger or a Bruce Springsteen who's still out there running 10 miles a day and doing 3-hour marathon shows, looking sinewy and if not youthful, at least fit.
Certainly not. The other time I saw him perform, it was in Pittsburgh, and they did that Beach Boys Christmas record, and it was just still genuinely thrilling, super great and sweet and fun and silly, and all the things that I want in my life. So I'm sorry he's gone, but I'm going to listen to those records nonstop for ever.
I remember I was in New York City with Tokyo Police Club recording what came to be the aborted version of Champ when Michael Jackson died. And I know that the legacy of Michael Jackson was complicated then and is still complicated now. But what I remember about that night is just we went out, left the studio to go for, a 2-hour dinner break, and walking through Manhattan, everywhere you went, you heard 3, 4, 7 Michael Jackson songs simultaneously playing out of cars and restaurants and apartments. And it was just, everyone clearly had just stopped what they were doing and started listening to this immortal music. And now whenever we lose one of these, towering great figures, which is starting to happen at a greater and greater clip, it does fill my heart with so much joy to just imagine that happening around the literal whole world. Right as we're recording this right now, millions of people are listening to Pet Sounds or are listening to Smiley Smile or are just going on Spotify and pressing play on the Beach Boys profile, whatever. And that music that he made is like flowing through people's emotions and through their days. And I mean, that's like what's sacred about music. And I feel like Brian Wilson understood that in a really intuitive way. And that's why he was such a great one.
I desperately want to get one of those guys on our show. I think Al Jardine would be fantastic. Al Jardine, if you are listening to this podcast right now, please come on Major Label Debut. We have so many questions for you.
If Al Jardine emails us after this episode goes out, that will be a beautiful twist.
He liked something I did on Facebook one time. So
okay.
I think that's, or someone who knows him or he has hired, or maybe someone who knows someone who he has hired, liked something I did on Facebook once. So Al Jardine, come. We will ask you tons of questions.
This is a show that's often about pulling back the curtain. And in that spirit, if you're like me, an inveterate peeker behind the curtain, I can't recommend enough some of the bootlegs you can find floating around of Beach Boys sessions, not just of like outtake songs, but of in-between takes. Brian Wilson trying to communicate to the musicians what he wants them to do. And it doesn't sound like a studio session I would necessarily want to be playing guitar in, but you can just hear this man trying to express what's happening in his brain. And it clearly is like hard to translate it into English, let alone into English that another musician will understand. But it's such an insight into just like how he was feeling his way through these symphonic studio masterpieces, almost in real time. I mean, it's this like electric document of a true genius fully at work. Pretty amazing that it's out there to be found. There's tons of Beach Boys lost media and recovered media and sort of, apocrypha, and it's pretty much all extremely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the big box sets I think are worth digging through. I love the Brian's Back era later on, all his solo material. The guy, I just, yeah, spend some time with it, please. Take some time. Now's the time to do it.
Yep, it's the one silver lining of these, these sad moments is that it's a reminder to us all of just the sheer greatness of the work, and there's no finer testament.
We love you, Brian, wherever you are in the cosmos. We love you.
Yeah, man. Hope there's a piano there.
Me too.
By way of a uneasy transition into the news story that we were planning to talk about today, another thing that's notable about not just the Beach Boys, but I'm reading the Beatles anthology right now, and I'm in the early days, and they're talking about their rotten deals that Brian Epstein was getting for them, and business savvy for bands was far less common in the 1950s and 60s than it is today, and there's perhaps no savvier operator, another genius of pop, and also a genius of branding and of marketing and of running her business. Taylor Swift, if you haven't heard, her version is now the original versions as well. She got her shit back. If you somehow didn't know about this, Taylor Swift's masters were owned by her record label. The record label sold them. She didn't like that they sold them. It was a big public to do, and Taylor, as she is able to do, mobilized her fan army to support complete sort of note for note re-records of her records, and she just replaced them, which is a loophole that's in every record contract. And Tokyo Police Club talked many times about like, oh, we're mad at this label, or we're not happy about the deal here. We could just go into the studio and recut A Lesson in Crime. And of course, every time we were like, well, that's not, people don't want to hear us now try to replay A Lesson in Crime. They're going to keep listening to the original one. But Taylor Swift fans do as they're told, and they did as they were told. They made the new versions the versions, and like drastically devalued the original masters, which is an amount of artistic power in the face of the music industry that is kind of one of one. It's really only Taylor that can do it. And so all of that goes to say, what are we to make of Taylor Swift's great fiscal business coup? And what, if anything, does it mean for any of the rest of us?
Well, there's no better example of the benefit of having loving and supportive parents than this woman who is, equal talent to someone like Brian Wilson, but also a much more savvy business person who understood that she could do this and, had the confidence to do it. And, Brian Wilson's dad famously sold all his music for pennies on the dollar, and probably a spite move against his kids. And it is, it's just to watch her go through this thing where it's like Big Machine in 2019, and then it gets sold to something called Ithaca Holdings, and then it gets sold to Shamrock Capital, and then just to be kind of not just biding her time, but actively using these sort of assaults against her to build a new business and springboard into this whole level of superstardom that I don't think anyone really has ever achieved. It's truly inspiring and terrifying, and just one of the most impressive things. I mean, she is like, if you were Taylor Swift right now, like, what do you do next after this? Like, what do you think she would do if she, like, what is she going to do? Is she going to make movies? Is she going to have a family? Is she going to do all these things? Just keep working? Is she going to take a break? Is she going to go? Is this her Beatles? And did she go to India and get spiritual? I don't know how spiritual I don't know enough about her.
I don't know how spiritual. I don't know how spirituality and paying $400 million to regain possession of your assets from a capital holdings investment company, I don't know how compatible those two strains are. But that would be, I think, personally, the thing I'd be most interested in. Because I'm always, maybe I'm naive, John Paul. Some have said I am. But whether it's Bieber or Rihanna or, you know, whoever of these like monster superstars who are like megacorps now, you know, like Taylor Swift is big in a way that just didn't exist until this generation, because she's like, I can be like a soda company. Like I can be $1 billion business all by myself. But she built that business by being an artist and by being a songwriter, and nominally she still is. And, you know, however much artistry is involved in doing re-recordings of your old work notwithstanding, she went and made, you know, two wispy, quiet, folky records with the guys from the National. She didn't have to do that, and, you know, whether or not those records were successful is not for me to say in public. But she did it, and so there's obviously something in her brain fires creatively. You know, something about the Dessner brothers got something about her excited, and those were not optimal record selling pop moves. They were good branding moves, you know, they were cred building moves, and I'm sure she was very much aware of that while she was doing it, but they also sound like creative pieces of artistic endeavor. And I just I wish she would take her fuck off money and fuck off to the studio and just make like weird records for the rest of time.
I haven't.
I don't know that that's what she wants to do, though.
I don't know. Maybe she will. Maybe she will make some weird stuff, experimental stuff. Maybe this is the Big Pink kind of situation. She goes somewhere, she disappears for a while, and comes back with a whole new creative identity, or you know, she goes and holds up and you know, I mean, she's got nothing to prove. She's got no. You know, I assume that she's a person who is relentless in every drive, and so I assume that she probably can't stop doing this. But from like a business perspective, it's very interesting to me too how she like, how soon do you think it'll be till she puts out like a box set, like a massive kind of, or is it in her best interest at this point in time to put a bookend on after the Eras tour? This is sort of one segment of my life. Do you think she's even going to be, is there a reason for her to do that? Like, does that make sense? I don't know, to put it all out in one giant.
It's funny, to speculate about Taylor Swift as like a human being making decisions, I just find so, it's like trying to speculate on like C-3PO's motivations. I don't know, like Taylor Swift just seems like a fictional character to me, and I think the Taylor Swift that we know is essentially a we don't know anything about her, who she is
as a person, yeah,
how she makes decisions. But it's interesting because it really, you know, some people have framed this as a real win for artists, this idea that, oh my God, look what you can do. And I think that that's probably complete baloney. Like, what Taylor Swift does has no bearing on what anyone else does, which she's her own industry, you know.
I'm not sure I agree with
example.
that. Well, I don't think I agree with you. I think honestly that it is important to see people claw these things back and take control. I do think it may be like, I do think also now it's never been easier to build this kind of business. You know, it was always this is what the show is about, right? Like the relationship that artists have with other people and how that they, you know, share and profit from their music, right? And she has, I don't know, set a standard, like you said, maybe an impossible to achieve standard for most people, but I do think it is like inspirational. Now, whether or not any of this is repeatable, I don't think so, because I essentially think of Taylor Swift as a pre-internet star, even though she probably popped off with like 2006, 2005, 2006. That was that first record. But like that to me is like certainly pre-dominant social media, right? Mm-hmm. That she's sort of the last megastar of the old way of being a pop star, right? Like she still is like basically a CD era artist, you know, like, I mean, and maybe because of, like, they always say that thing about Thriller, that the reason why it sold so many copies is that it was all three formats at once. Like you got LPs, cassettes, and CDs. And maybe Taylor also benefited from the sort of end of the CD era and the iTunes downloads and streaming in that same kind of way. But yeah, is it repeatable? No. But is it inspirational? Yeah, and fascinating, right? Like
Well, it's fascinating. I find it my thing, and this is just a matter of personal preference, but that's why it's our podcast. Is I'm really down on this contemporary thing of like our most popular artists are also our most beloved entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yes.
people like the way that people celebrate Taylor Swift's business savvy is part and parcel of their fandom of her with the music. And I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum, but I don't like those two. I mean, this is a podcast about the commingling of art and commerce, and so maybe Taylor Swift represents the apotheosis of everything we're talking about, which is fuck a record label. She's the whole thing. It's just Taylor Swift, and she's a businessman, and she's an artist, and she's an entertainer. But I hope this is the end of that, the Taylor Swift lawsuit era, because it's boring to me that people are growing up daydreaming about making music as part of their like 10-part business plan. And this is all, we all have to do this because of social media, and we all have to, it is being an entrepreneur. I'm not in a band anymore. I have to make a resume. My whole resume says like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a small business owner. Look at all the things I've done, because I have to say something.
You're a podcaster, Graham. That's what you are.
That's out of the grim necessity. I am compelled to get money in order to continue living in this, fallen world that we've cobbled together for ourselves. Taylor Swift is not. Taylor Swift is free. Taylor Swift could free me and not even notice it. It would be a rounding error. And that's why this podcast is to say, Taylor,
please
Al
give us
Jardine,
money.
if you're listening, please come on our podcast. Taylor Swift, if you're listening, please cut me a check for like 1.5. American, when I put that in a Canadian bank account, I'll tell you, I'm quitting the podcast. I'm taping the next episode from Tahiti, baby.
You got to become a Teamster and then get a job driving a truck on one of her tours, and then you'll get the famously good bonuses that she gives to people.
Oh, yeah.
But like, I have a friend, shout out Kaylee, who loves Taylor Swift and like went to see her here in LA, and I do think that this is probably inspiring to her. She's like a young woman who's in the early part of her career, and you see this person who's 15 years older than you or whatever doing this thing, and I do think it's like, I don't know, I'm happy for her, and I want, I don't know, I feel like the Beach Boys music, I feel like that this is a moment of like great optimism for Taylor Swift, and I want her to explode out into everything that she wants to be, and I don't know what that is, and it'll be fascinating to see what it is. But yeah, do you think that she'd ever sell her entire catalog again, like the Bob Dylan? Do you think there's an amount of money at this point that someone could come to her and be like, how about if I gave you $8 billion?
Like the $1 trillion bill that Mr. Burns steals and gives to Castro, I think would be the opening offer. Because, I have long been suspicious and moderately concerned at, your Bruce Springsteens, your Bob Dylans, these guys who are not famous for their mercenary dealings, all of a sudden cashing in. I'm wondering if there's like a rocket ship they're buying seats on. And if Taylor Swift, who's young and who does not need to do estate management or, pay her family off in one lump sum, if she sells her whole catalog as well, then I'm really going to start to wonder what the money is for.
Yeah, like a Fallout style situation where the bunkers that everyone's going into.
But Taylor Swift doesn't need money in the apocalypse. Taylor Swift will be standing on top of the mountain of skulls. She has the army. She can call more banners than anyone probably on this planet right now.
This is true. That's
why we're not insulting Taylor Swift.
Yes.
Major Label Debut is a pro Swiftie podcast. Please do not kill me.
We are joining your army. Taylor, if you'll have us, please take us.
I think Taylor needs like a couple of viziers who can tell her about 1990s alt rock. I think that could be our role.
Just like, we're like in the Mad Max movie. We're like the people who tell the past. We're grizzled historians.
Grizzled historian / blood bag for Taylor Swift. That's the only other thing on my resume, as well as Tokyo Police Club small business entrepreneur.
Well, this is approaching the limit of what a short episode could possibly be. We're 25 minutes in here.
Well, we had to cover 2 world-shaking events. All right, let's wrap it up. But just to put you on the spot, what's your favorite Taylor Swift song?
Ooh! I gotta say, "Style" is my favorite Taylor. That may be kind of like a basic Taylor Swift song to like, but I think it's kind of a perfect pop song. I honestly also, I know people may hate me for this, but I did love the Ryan Adams cover album of 1989. Obviously has a different meaning now, but like it is it was a I did listen to that a lot when it came out.
You know what? It's a testament to how strong those songs are. You can mess with them any which way, and they're still going to be good.
Right? Yeah, right. I mean, but yeah, Style. What about you? What's
22.
your jam? Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I just think it's like that's it. That's what I want out of pop music, and I feel like it's kind of about what everyone wants out of pop music, which is to be 22 and feel 22 and just celebrate that. And it's like, I think musically it sounds like what it feels like to feel 22. And it's got, it's direct, it's clear, it's to the point, it's concise, it's catchy as hell. I wouldn't call it Brian Wilson-esque, but maybe it has a little bit of that same youthful American promise of pop music wrapped up in it.
Okay, let's go on this. What is your favorite Brian Wilson song?
Now, that will be a basic answer. I mean, I think if I, after this, go down a Brian rabbit hole for a while, I might find a hipster answer that I'll follow up with later, but it's God only knows. What can I say?
It's rock solid. Mine may seem a little hipstery, but it is honestly my favorite is Heroes and Villains.
Rules.
And Van Dyke Parks is always around LA and playing show. Like he played a show at Zebulon, I think in the fall, and I couldn't go, but let's listen to every Beach Boys album and every Taylor Swift album and do a Beach Boys Taylor Swift podcast where we draw comparisons between the two.
It sounds like a potentially fascinating endeavor. I will start doing it and see how it goes.
Can Taylor Swift take her mini billions and disappear into the Catskills and come back with a full album cover of Pet Sounds?
Taylor Swift could buy a beautiful, humongous sandbox filled with nothing but the highest quality Arabian desert sand in which to put her grand piano and compose or recompose Brian Wilson's masterpiece. And
I just think of like a Steinway on top of a Steinway on top of another Steinway, just like a tower of Steinways.
And Travis can lift her up on his shoulders. So she can
that's true. Yeah, to do that's good.
Do you think that Taylor and Travis made a deal with God that the Chiefs would lose the Super Bowl last year in exchange for Taylor Swift regaining control of her masters? Final question of the podcast.
Yes, I do. Let's come out on that. Okay.
In conclusion, rest in peace, Brian Wilson. You are a true genius, and nothing that we love or do would exist without you. So RIP to a real one, and thank you to a real one, John Paul Bullock, for having this wonderful, fun conversation with me. I liked this.
Thank you so much, Graham, for having me here. Also, I'd like to say congratulations, Taylor. If you want to come with Al Jardine onto the podcast, we would love to have the two of you on together to discuss the future.
100%. Major Label Debut is produced by John Paul Bullock. Thanks again, my friend.
Thank you.
And also Josh Hook as well. We love him. Our theme music is composed by another timeless genius, Mr. Greg Alsop. Not in a bed or a sandbox as far as we know, but nevertheless, pretty good shit. We're on all the socials, media. Hit us up with any thoughts of guests you think we should have, or news stories you think we should cover, or your rage at how we said Brian Wilson and Taylor Swift are commensurate artists from one angle or the other. We can't thank you enough for listening. Major Label Debut will, of course, return, as always, with more tales from the intersection of art and commerce. So long.
Bye-bye.